I have a confession to make. I am about to celebrate the 20th anniversary of my ordination as a deacon this coming November. And I learned on Thursday that I have been preaching about All Saints all wrong ever since then. So, I'm here to correct your record after all this time. We were talking in Bible study on Thursday about the difference between All Saints Day and on November 1st and All Souls Day, or the Feast of the All Faithful Departed on November 2nd. And as we were looking up the distinction, I discovered that I've actually been preaching All Souls Day on All Saints. So I need to clarify things and then show you, talk about why Zacchaeus makes a lot of sense to talk when we're talking about a feast like today's. I want you to turn in your prayer books, please, to a place we rarely go. And that's to the calendar of the church, beginning on page 19. Now, for each one of the months of the year, and we're not going to go through all of them, you'll be relieved to know, you'll see that there are different people remembered on a number of the days of each month. And you'll see that some of them are in bold print, and some of them are not. Since this calendar was put together back in the early 1970s, we're coming up on 40 years of using the new prayer book. But since then, the calendar has been expanded by General Convention to include folks who are more recent, to expand to more women, to people from other cultures. And all of the purpose of all of these people is to celebrate their witness and their example as disciples of Christ. Now, the difference between the bold print and the small print is that everything that's there has something to do with Jesus. In January, you'll see that the first couple of feasts are about events in Jesus' life. You'll then see two other bolded events, and again, they're events, but I want you to notice something in particular. The confession of St. Peter, the apostle, remembers the day which Jesus asked, "Who do you say that I am?" And again, Peter says, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." That was his confession of faith, just as we confess our faith in the Creed. A week later, we have the observance of the conversion of St. Paul, the apostle, his road to Damascus experience. Okay? So you see that both of those folks are called saints with a capital S. Everybody else that's in plain print just has their name. Okay, there's no saint in front of there. If you turn over to the next page, you'll see in February, again, we have another event in Jesus' life, and then down on the 24th, you'll see Saint Matthias, the apostle, and across the page, you'll see Saint Joseph, Jesus' earthly father. All of this is to say that those people that we in our tradition use the word saint with a capital S, are folks who experienced Jesus, being with Jesus in his lifetime. Now, if you look at the Roman Catholic calendar, you'll see saint in front of lots of people's names. And in fact, if you look up a lot of the people in this plain print, you'll see that many of them have saint in front of their names. But in our calendar, in our tradition, the folks that we hold up as the most important models for us of what it is to be a human being and yet a disciple of Christ are those who lived in, with, and walked and worked with Jesus, including people like Mary Magdalene. She's listed as a saint, as a capital S saint. There are several others, and you can wander through there. You'll see in April, down at the bottom, St. Mark the Evangelist. Now, he's remembered specifically because of the gospel that is attached to his name. Okay, again, a story about the life of Christ. And I will let you look through those yourselves and see that anything that's in bold print is considered to be a more important feast of the church year. And the word capital S saint is used because those are the folks who experienced Jesus in their own lifetime. Okay? So there's the first part of it. So when it comes to preaching on All Saints' Day, then in our tradition, we'd be looking at the life of those folks that we just talked about. And All Souls' Day would be more about the people that we know that have been models for us, people in our lives who have gone before, the folks listed in our insert this morning, as well as some of the people who are in the calendar, who have lived, again, exemplary lives and are examples for us. And therein lies the difference, and I think, and therein lies the reason why we celebrate this feast on the Sunday after November 1st, as well as on the day itself. Because those folks who are examples for us are the ones who help us stay on track and stay on our journeys. So why the story of Zacchaeus? Well, first of all, because it's one of my favorite stories. It's not in any of the Gospels except Luke, which means we only come across it once every 3 years. The unfortunate thing is that it does fall also in our cycle of readings on the Sunday we celebrate All Saints. So I make an executive decision that once every 3 years we use that Gospel instead of one of the others. And here's why. Zacchaeus was an outsider. Zacchaeus was, in many cases, a pariah. A person who was reviled by his fellow Jews because he was a tax collector. They felt that he had been co-opted by the Romans, that he had, and in a sense had been, because he was one of the many Jewish people who was responsible for collecting the taxes that were due to Rome. And they had a lousy reputation, not only because they were taking money on behalf of the oppressor, but also because they were notorious for skimming off the top. They would inflate the tax bill, keep the extra, pocket the overage, and send on what was due to Rome onto Rome. Well, it's no wonder that people didn't like them, didn't want to have anything to do with them, and felt that they, were sinners, as we hear the crowd say in the story. Nonetheless, Zacchaeus had heard the noise, had heard the story of Jesus, had heard the news that he was around, and he went to be in the crowd. He went to check him out, but he was on the outside of the crowd for 2 reasons. One, because nobody wanted him around, but the other was because he was short. He was really challenged. So he climbed up a tree. He wanted to see what was going on. He wanted the big picture. He wanted an overview of what was happening. So he climbs up into the tree, probably with no other expectation than to just see what's going on, to get a sense of what this is all about. And all of a sudden, Jesus looks up in the tree and calls him. He says, "Zacchaeus, come down. I must eat at your house today." Jesus invites himself over for dinner. How many of your houses would be ready for Jesus to invite himself over for dinner with little or no notice? You lie. My husband raised his hand. I would not want Jesus to come look at my house right now. Nonetheless, that does say something about Jesus in our lives, doesn't it? Doesn't it? We've got to have our houses all in order to be ready for Jesus. Well, Jesus didn't care. He calls Zacchaeus and said, we're going to go to your house for dinner. And of course, the crowd just thought there was nothing, we won't have anything to do with it. This man's a sinner. Why would Jesus ever go and have dinner with somebody that we can't stand, who is not keeping the law? And Zacchaeus hears the rumbling And before Jesus can say anything to respond to that rumbling, Zacchaeus says, Lord, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for having defrauded. And not only am I sorry, I'm going to make restitution. And not only am I going to make restitution, I'm going to make restitution with interest. I'm going to pay back 4 times what I took from people. And Jesus says, today, salvation has come to this house, for this too is a son of Abraham. This too is a man who has been restored to the community. What's happened in this story is that Zacchaeus was interested. He'd heard a little something. He got a tug in his heart and wanted to learn a little bit more, so he climbed up the tree just to get a bigger view. No commitments, no nothing. Just to get a bigger view of what was going on down there. Jesus called him. Jesus called him. He heard Jesus in his heart call him to come down. And Jesus says, I will come to your home today. I will come into your heart today. And Zacchaeus was converted. He confessed his sin. He made a response to that confession. And Jesus restored him to the life of the community. Now, along with Jesus are all the disciples. Peter and Andrew and James and John, those who had responded immediately to Jesus' call, just as Zacchaeus did, not having a clue what they were getting themselves into. Not having a clue. And we know as we read Mark's gospel in particular, that Peter in particular, all the disciples are a little dense, but Peter in particular is really obtuse. He just doesn't get Jesus. He follows him, and he's trying to learn, but he just doesn't get it. And in fact, he doesn't get it until Jesus appears at the time of the resurrection. If somebody as obtuse as Peter, and somebody and a group of people who want to be part of the community but don't really know where they're being led, stick with this journey, then can we do any less? Can we do any less? We are faithful on our journey to the extent that we can be. We are faithful to Christ. We do what we can to live a Christ-like life. But there are times when our world, when the crowd gets in our way. And there are a lot of things in that crowd, not just people. There's the conflicts for our time. There are the priorities we put on how we use the gifts that God has given us. We know that God gives us wonderful gifts, and often we'll use them for the purpose that God intended, but there are also times when we don't. Zacchaeus was good with money. He misused it. He fixed it. Years ago, the treasurer of the Episcopal Church was good with money. And she skimmed a whole lot. She skimmed a whole lot. And paid the social price for that by being incarcerated. But ultimately, if we believe the gospel of Christ, she has been forgiven and reconciled to the community. All Saints is a celebration of our humanity. It's a celebration of our gifts and abilities as much as it is a celebration of our frailties and our failings. God calls each of us, sometimes in the midst of the crowd, and just sort of tugs at our hearts a little bit. We say, okay, I want to get a little bit bigger picture. So we climb up a number of trees. One of the trees might be a scripture passage that you hear on Sunday morning. He says, oh, I need to get a better sense of what that's about. Another bigger picture may be coming to communion and hearing the invitation that everyone is welcome, no matter how faithful or how frequently you've been here or not. Sometimes it's reading an article in the newspaper. It's something that's going on. Oh, I need to learn more about that. There are a lot of things that sort of help clear the crowds away. The question then is, are we aware of Jesus calling us and saying, I will come home with you for dinner today? Because God is calling each of us in our hearts. Jesus wants to come home with us, regardless of what our houses look like. David was right. Yeah, he lied at the beginning, he didn't lie now. He's right. It doesn't matter what our houses look like, whether it's our physical houses or our internal spiritual houses. It doesn't matter. Jesus wants to come home. And the question for us is, do we invite him in? Do we invite him in? All Saints is one of those feasts on which we renew our baptismal promises. And those promises are another way of getting the big picture of what it is to live a Christian life. It lays out for us the ways in which Jesus invites us to walk with him. And so let us now renew those promises and invite Jesus into our hearts once again.